to walk to work today?
I didn't have to do that.
Shuttle?
No. Unit home.
What? You took your unit home? Really?
If guys wanted to, if it was available, to avoid giving the pass to do all that, you got your car, come back and forth with it.
Really? Wait a minute. Okay. Where are you living at?
I'm in this area out of Cook County. So, like, I don't know if you know the garage is.
Oh. What happened to it?
They're just doing it.
Oh, they're redoing it?
Yeah, they're redoing it. So,
That's 3 levels of no park?
exactly.
I used to love that when I worked there. Oh,
Yeah.
snow outside, won't be on my car. Until somebody would never always wake up and would throw their mask out and breathe in. Yeah. Their garage, if it was up that much, yeah. There was like the clearance was like 40. Yeah. Yes. Well, the other one was you were in a rush and you didn't close the side panel door. Oh. Did that. I did that. Yeah, it's tight. Yeah, it's tight. Yeah. And wait a minute, it's been that way. I worked here 27, 28 years ago.
Garage was the same.
Yes. Yes. No, wait. You just said they're redoing the garage. He undersold that. There are holes. Way wider now. Wait a minute. Like they were repairing concrete. Oh, wow. Replacing concrete and rebar.
It's like when you're inside, there's another station.
Yeah. They must have some, there's got to be some conduit under there or something. Some power or something. That they're digging that much up? Why would you be digging that far down just to be repaired?
Well, no, I don't know. I know nothing about like how you figure the structure. It's level by level. It started here and then eventually they were going to be able to do some of this and they're like, it's going to take longer to do that. It's going to be
Close it down. Wow. It's like there's no place for you to park to come to work.
Just a side lot, which is like, what? 20 something.
Yeah. So all your morning people got that.
You alone before? It's like, I don't mind for anybody.
Yes. Oh.
Do you want to work today?
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. They started stuff is just crumbling. And it routinely did that crumble stuff.
All right, this is when I walk out. That's probably 3 minutes, 4-minute warning, and then we'll be good to go. Thank y'all for making it here, especially on short notice. We've got a nice full room. I'm Danny Wimmer. I'm press secretary for the Attorney General. Should you need anything, let me know. I'll be around in the room when we wrap here. Working a full day, so any questions after the fact. Most of y'all know how to reach me or work with somebody who does. agpress@michigan.gov. We're going to be hearing today from 5 folks, that's including the Attorney General. We're going to have Oakland County Treasurer Robert Wittenberg, State Senator Jeremy Moss, Representative Noah Arbett, Representative Sam Steckeloff, and the Attorney General. After the Attorney General closes out with the prepared remarks, we're going to open up for questions from the media here. I will be up here. Do me a favor, if you have any questions, raise your hand. I'm going to call on you guys. We'll keep it orderly. We'll keep it moving. I can see all the way to the back. Looks like I've still got John back there. I'll be looking all the way across. Nobody should have to pull out too many gymnastics, calisthenics. I should be able to see the whole room from up here. I am asking, out of respect for our topic and numerous guests, that we retain questions to today's topic. And when I call on you for a question, we all know it's Sam Schreiber with MERS. Not everybody up here is going to be as familiar working with you. If I do call on you, would you please just first thing back, name an affiliate? Even if everybody in the county sees you on the news at 6 o'clock every night, I would appreciate just starting out before your question with Sam Schreiber, MERS. I would appreciate it greatly. We will have a press release to follow this. I do not have hard copies in the room today, but it will be digitally distributed inside of 60 minutes from when you walk out the door. If you don't get that timely, just reach out. We're probably still working on it. All All right, and with that, when I return, I will have much more company with me, and I'd expect that inside of 3 minutes.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. What happened last week at Temple Israel was not random, and it wasn't spontaneous. It didn't just occur in a vacuum. Many of us, myself included, have been sounding the alarm about the terrifying rise of hate crimes, and especially anti-Semitism, for nearly 8 years now. In my first year in office, 2019, I established the department's Hate Crimes and Domestic Terrorism Unit in response to the increase of hateful rhetoric and hate crimes I saw across the state. And last May, I joined Rep. Arbett at Temple Israel, a synagogue just blocks from where my family lives, to introduce the work of this unit and to educate the congregation on how to identify and how to report hate crimes. And only 6 weeks ago, Temple Israel welcomed the FBI for an active shooter drill to prepare for a mass casualty event. Sadly, these weren't held out of an abundance of caution, they were held out of an abundance of need. Now, I'd like to thank my fellow Jewish elected officials, Oakland County Treasurer Robert Wittenberg, State Senator Jeremy Moss, State Representative Noah Arbett, and State Representative Samantha Steckeloff for joining me today as we discuss our concerns and the work that lies ahead as we continue to combat and tackle the growing issue of anti-Semitism and domestic terrorism here in Michigan. Oakland County Clerk Lisa Brown sends her apologies. She would have liked to have been here, but she was not available for today. Now I'll have more to say at the end, but before we open up for questions to the press, first I would like to welcome Treasurer Wittenberg to the podium.
Well, thank you, A.G. Nessel, and thank you all for being here today. And I'm speaking as a Jewish countywide elected official in Oakland County, and as you mentioned, Lisa Brown, my colleague, the Clerk Register of Deeds in Oakland County. And I want to take a moment to paint a picture of the Jewish community here in Michigan and why this terrorist attack has impacted so many people so deeply. There are roughly 15 million Jewish people in the world, and about 110,000 live here in Michigan, about 1% of our state's population. And about 60,000 Jewish residents live in Oakland County specifically, with most of the remaining Jewish population concentrated in Southeast Michigan, but there are Jewish families that live in communities across the state. Oakland County is truly the center of the Jewish community in Michigan, and we are an incredibly interconnected community. Temple Israel was originally founded in 1941 in Detroit and has been located in West Bloomfield for more than 45 years. It is one of the largest Reform synagogues in the world, and nearly 20% of Oakland County's Jewish residents are members of Temple Israel. Now, if you're Jewish and in Michigan, especially in Oakland County, you either attend Temple Israel or you have a close friend or family member who does, and you most certainly have attended an event at Temple Israel. And for me, this is deeply personal. My wife and both of my siblings' spouses grew up attending Temple Israel. All of my nieces and nephews have been bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed there. My in-laws live just a block away from the synagogue, and obviously when they heard the news, they locked themselves inside their home. That is only my story. Every Jewish person in this region has their own story from that moment, where they were, who they called or who they texted, and what was going through their minds as the details began to emerge. That's why this attack has had such a direct and chilling impact on Jewish people all across Michigan. It has created real fear in our community. Many Jewish institutions are located right in Oakland County. Our synagogues, our schools, our community centers, our agencies. When something like this happens, it reverberates through every part of our community. And this was not just an attack on one building. For many people in our community, it felt like an attack on every Jewish person in Michigan. And this is intolerable, and people need to stand up and say enough is enough. And not just the Jewish community, because as I said, we're 1% of the population. We need allies. And I know there are many people and communities who stand with us, including the Chaldean community, but this needs to be a priority for all Michiganders. We need people to listen to our concerns and recognize that we, as a community, are hurting. The Jewish community has endured hatred and violence throughout history, and we have always responded the same way, by standing together, by supporting one another, and by continuing to live our Jewish values proudly and openly. But more can and must be done to help prevent these horrific events from occurring again. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I'm going to bring Senator Moss up next to continue this.
Good morning. It has been an agonizing time for the Jewish community, whether it's the last few days since the attack on Temple Israel, or the last few years since October 7th, or the last decade since Charlottesville. Anti-Semitic conspiracies are vast, and come from every direction on both political extremes and are incredibly dangerous. More than just normal hate or bigotry, anti-Semitism breeds violent attacks, as evidenced on Thursday in West Bloomfield. Our community's security systems worked, but the reality is that they're in place because an attack like this was predicted. Jews pray and go to school in fortresses like no other group must experience. We can't fully appreciate our First Amendment rights in this country when we sacrifice our freedom for security. Also, as evidenced on Thursday, this attack was an anti-Israel driven form of anti-Semitism, which is the very specific crisis we're going through in this moment. We've heard the prevailing response that American Jews shouldn't be held responsible for the actions of the Israel government, and we agree with that. But we're also watching Jews be targeted for expressing any sort of relationship with Israel. Temple Israel displays an Israeli flag, and almost every synagogue in Metro Detroit displays Israeli flags. Temple Israel is built so that the sanctuary faces towards Jerusalem, just as every synagogue in the world faces towards Jerusalem, because that's the direction in which Jewish people pray. Congregants in Temple Israel pray for the welfare of the land of Israel and its inhabitants, because that's in the daily and weekly Jewish prayers in Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Judaism. But if you display or express any of that, what most Jews define as Judaism, you become ripe for what others believe are legitimate attacks about Israel. And that is the anti-Semitism we need to address. It has caused people to harass Jews who publicly wear kippahs or Jewish stars or Hebrew writing. It's turned Zionist into a slur. It has led to vandalism right here at home on the anniversary of October 7th in 2024. Our Jewish Federation building in Bloomfield was vandalized. It has infected our politics when donors who are Jewish or the candidates that they support are being accused of being a part of an Israeli-led conspiracy. And it's the reason murderers have killed people here in America, including an 82-year-old woman in Boulder who was lit on fire for peacefully advocating for Israeli hostages, and 2 young diplomats who were shot dead for attending an event at a Jewish museum in D.C. Because training and preparation and sheer luck, all 140 children in Temple Israel went home to their families on Thursday, and it's highlighted the heroism of allies, including the security staff from an active shooter situation. But this has also provided us with a rare opportunity as Jewish leaders in Michigan to spotlight this problem without stepping on anyone's grief, to illuminate, explain, and work to prevent the next anti-Semitic attack. Something is broken here. There should be a consensus around tackling anti-Semitism, and we're here to share our perspective on this. This is not just a Jewish problem. This is a problem for all of us as Americans. Anti-Semitism illuminates a decay in society. It permits conspiracy theories to take hold, the greatest and oldest of which is anti-Semitism, and it makes violence an acceptable response in a civil society. So that's why we're gathered here today, really to share from our perspective what our community is going through and propel others to join us in a response to prevent the next one. And I want to hand it off now to State Representative Noah Arbett.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. This has been an incredibly challenging time for my community, as it has been for all of us here today. I'm the state representative for West Bloomfield and for Temple Israel. This was an attack on my home in more ways than one. My parents were married at Temple Israel. I went to Hebrew school at Temple Israel. I was bar mitzvahed at Temple Israel. And one day, God willing, I hope to be married at Temple Israel. Temple Israel shaped me and made me the person I am today. It made me a humanist and someone who cares deeply about people who are different than me. It is the kind of place that cultivates proud Jewish leaders who feel called to repair the world. I didn't realize it until this week, but it's also a place I took for granted. It was just always there, ever present. But the prospect that it might not be has been more devastating than I can even express. The other place that made me who I am is West Bloomfield. I love West Bloomfield so much. It is not a place that gets a lot of notoriety, good, bad, or indifferent. And to know that most of the world first heard of my home this week because of the hate that someone tried to inflict on us is wrong. I want people to know West Bloomfield by the heroism of Temple Israel's security team, by our amazing police and fire departments, by the township leaders Jonathan Warshay, Terry Weingarten, and Debbie Binder, by the way that the Chaldean community sprung into action to defend us, from the way that we will lift each other up and heal together across communal lines. That is what defines West Bloomfield and makes it the amazing community that I love with all my heart and am so proud to be from and to represent. We are West Bloomfield strong. I was motivated to run for office primarily by two things: to give Greater West Bloomfield a stronger voice in the state capitol and to take on hate crimes. In my first term, I sponsored the Michigan Hate Crime Act and the Institutional Desecration Act. Because of these landmark laws, Michigan now has among the most stringent and toughest penalties for hate crimes against people and against houses of worship of any state in the nation. As proud as I am of these laws, clearly they are not enough to prevent anti-Semitic terror from reaching the very community I promised to protect. Prevention begins by better understanding the problem we face. Over the past decade and a half, American Jews have been told not to believe our eyes or our ears, as individuals and movements hostile to our very existence have grown in stature, support, and power, all while Jews and Jewish institutions have been jeered and stalked and threatened and vandalized and graffitied and beaten and shot and burned and killed. This is a wake-up call. In the Middle Ages, anti-Semitism attacked Jews as Christ killers. In the 20th century, it attacked Jews as racial pollutants on society. Today, it attacks Jews as an illegitimate sovereign nation, as in the State of Israel. Anti-Semitism operates differently than other prejudices. It is a flexible conspiracy theory that sees the Jews as behind any geopolitical conflict, economic justice, societal ill, or cultural rot, dealer's choice. The most common anti-Semitic conspiracy theory today is that Israeli interests control the United States government. They're the Jewish diaspora, American synagogues, organizations like HIAS, and political outfits like AIPAC. This matters because the attack on our beloved Temple Israel should not be understood as an attempt to, quote, prevent Jews from worshiping in peace, but as someone attacking Temple Israel because we are a proudly Zionist congregation and support the State of Israel. When you attack a Jewish synagogue because you oppose Israel's military actions, that's anti-Semitism. When you vandalize a Jewish-owned business because you oppose Israel's leaders, that's anti-Semitism. When you hound and harass Jewish elected officials because they refuse to disavow their support for Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, that's anti-Semitism. To be clear, no one is saying that it's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. There are many sane and rational ways that one can engage in critical conversations and debate about Israeli policies, politicians, or even the nature of American foreign policy toward Israel, as there is about any country, without invoking conspiracies that endanger Jews. But too many influential voices are actively choosing to speak recklessly and to whip up hate against the Jewish community. From Hassan Piker to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, they are radicalizing far too many people, especially young people. Like many Americans, I believe Vladimir Putin's Russia to be a criminal terrorist state. But when was the last time someone bombed a Russian Orthodox church, vandalized a Russian cultural center, or beat up a Russian restaurant owner because they oppose Putin's illegal war in Ukraine? Never. It doesn't happen. So why is it regularly happening to Jews all across America? All Jews, no matter what we think about Israel, its leaders, and its policies, are deserving of equal treatment under the law and equal treatment in civic, economic, social, cultural, and academic spaces. Anything else is pure, vile, dangerous anti-Semitism. The relationship between hate speech and hate violence is cause and effect. The more anti-Jewish hate speech and anti-Zionist conspiracies are normalized and mainstreamed, the easier it becomes for more people to view all Jews collectively as legitimate targets for violence. That means condemning and marginalizing anti-Semitic rhetoric literally acts to counter violence. Conversely, when people are silent or permissive in response to anti-Semitism, or worse, actually feed these conspiracies, they are complicit in establishing a permission structure for further violence against Jews. That means members of the public and political leaders alike have a crucial responsibility to dial down the rhetoric, to take their rhetoric out of the space of conspiracy and into the space of legitimate political debate. For example, saying, "I vehemently oppose the policies the AIPAC pushes and believe it has too much influence in Congress," has a profoundly different tone and impact than "Zionists control the entire United States government and we must quash their influence." One is a subject for debate. The other engages in wholesale conspiracy that endangers Jews. The crisis of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence we face did not arrive overnight. It arrived through the passivity and silence of far too many individuals and institutions who would never accept this type of hatred and violence targeting their own community. But we are not doomed to failure. There are tangible steps that we can take here in Michigan to arrest this crisis and to prevent the radicalization that far too often leads to violence. What we can do is train parents, teachers, coaches, and peers to recognize the signs of radicalization and intervene before it becomes violence. What we can do is fund programs that deter hate and targeted violence in the first place. That's why I have partnered with PERIL, the Polarization, Extremism, Research, and Innovation Laboratory at American University, to bring data-driven, research-based toolkits, trainings, and curricula on preventing hate, targeted violence, radicalization, and misinformation by using a public health approach. PERIL's prevention resources are available for free to the public, and I would like to see every school district in Michigan implement their award-winning K-5 digital literacy curriculum that equips our youngest students with the skills to be resilient against propaganda and misinformation. I'm also working on legislation to create an Office of Hate Crime and Extremist Violence Prevention within the executive branch of the Michigan government, similar to those that exist in other states, to bring together public and mental health professionals, law enforcement, faith leaders, education, sports, academia, technology, and social media leaders, and establish a statewide strategy for preventing hate crimes and extremist violence here in Michigan. Rooting out anti-Semitism, hate, and extremism from our society and addressing radicalization requires not just a whole of government effort, but a whole of society effort too. It is incumbent upon each of us, individually and collectively, to cultivate spaces among our families, our friends, our colleagues, where anti-Semitism and hate have no purchase. We cannot and must not fail. On behalf of the people of West Bloomfield, that is what I will continue to do, and that is what I know all of us up here will continue to do, and we invite the rest of the public and our colleagues in government to do as well. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to my colleague and dear friend, Representative Samantha Steckeloff.
Thank you, Representative Arbett, and thank you all for being here today. I'm State Representative Samantha Steckeloff and a proud member of Temple Israel, a beautiful home where my sister-in-law and almost 2-year-old niece were on their way to tour for preschool. But I first want to begin by thanking our law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency personnel, as well as the Chaldean community who responded so quickly and professionally to the attack on Temple Israel. Their actions helped secure the scene, protect lives, and ensure that families were reunited safely. I also want to recognize the teachers, the staff, the security personnel at the synagogue who followed their training and protected their children in their care. Their preparedness and calm response played a critical role in preventing what could have been a far greater tragedy. Friday night, I attended services with my congregation at Temple Israel and heard of the heroism of that day. During the service, our rabbi reminded us of something very powerful. Thursday, we experienced a miracle, and you don't ignore miracles. All 106 of those children are home safe. The outcome was not an accident. It was the result of planning and training and security measures that were already in place. Across the United States, Jewish institutions collectively spend about $765 million a year on security. In many places, this is 14% of their operating budget. This trained security personnel and surveillance systems controlled access and emergency preparedness training, all necessary measures to protect our synagogues, schools, and community centers from growing threats. Here in Michigan, the state has recognized this challenge, and over the past several years, the Michigan legislature has appropriated about $19 million in security funding to support training, the coordination with law enforcement, and facility security improvements. And I want you all to know that I have already begun those conversations and finding out where an appropriation can lead in this year's budget. The events of this week demonstrate that these investments matter. The training the teachers and the staff received was implemented, security protocols were followed, and emergency responders were able to coordinate quickly. These measures helped ensure that every child made its way home to their family. And I would like to turn it back to our Attorney General, Dana Nessel.
Thanks so much to all of you for your words and sentiments on this important subject. And so as I mentioned earlier, in 2019, I launched the Hate Crimes and Domestic Terrorism Unit within the Department of Attorney General to combat the rise of hate crimes occurring right here in the state of Michigan. Now, this unit has taken on some very high-profile cases, including the anti-government militia group, the Wolverine Watchmen, and the neo-Nazi white supremacist hate group as the base, as well as dozens and dozens of cases involving threats against elected officials at every level, both Democrats and Republicans throughout the state, from lawmakers to sitting judges, sheriffs, prosecutors, United States senators, the governor, and many more. In 2019, the Michigan State Police reported 630 Michigan residents were the victim of a hate crime that year. That's up from 356 victims that were reported in 2010, and we don't have the numbers for 2025 yet, but in 2024, sadly, that number grew again to 774, the highest number for Michigan over the last 2 decades. But thanks to the persistent work of Representative Arbett, we now have better laws on the books that expand who is protected under the state hate crime statutes and have more stringent penalties attached, and that provide prosecutors with better tools to combat and prosecute hate crimes as well as institutional desecration. These crimes are designed to send a message, and so was our response. Hate has no place here in Michigan. I want residents of our state to know that the Department of Attorney General will take seriously any and all reports of hate crimes and will work diligently to investigate and prosecute these crimes to the fullest extent of the law. Michigan has been ahead of the curve in fighting domestic terrorism, and for decades we've had better laws than every other state in the nation and even the federal government. We enacted those laws under Governor Engler, and we cannot now allow divided government to set us back from this critical mission. I appreciate Senator Sue Schink and Representative Denise Menser for introducing legislation to address Michigan's anti-terrorism statute, and I'd also like to thank Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks, who recognizes the great importance of this bill and is working hard for the passage of Senate Bill 502 through the upper chamber. Now, these are 2 critical Michigan laws designed to prevent terrorist activity in Michigan by criminalizing engaging in terrorist activity, and that's MCL 750.543F, which is a life offense, and threatening an act of terrorism, which is a 20-year felony under MCL 750.543M. The United States Supreme Court issued a decision in 2023 requiring prosecutors to demonstrate a defendant acted with at least recklessness to prove a true threat, creating this badly needed change to Michigan's existing statute. Now, this Senate Bill 502 amends the law to provide two methods for proving recklessness. A person threatens to commit an act of terrorism and communicates the threat to any other person knowing that the communication would be viewed as threatening violence, or threatens to commit an act of terrorism and communicates that threat with reckless disregard of a substantial risk, and that the communication would be viewed as threatening violence. Michigan's anti-terrorism statute has saved many lives and has been instrumental in prosecuting threats against schools, law enforcement, judicial officers, and elected officials on both sides of the aisle. So this minor statutory change should have broad-based support. Threats of terrorism are simply too serious to risk weakening our ability to respond, and the attack on Temple Israel only underscores the incredible seriousness of this need. These laws, quite simply, are murder prevention. But we need more than simply better laws. Those of us within the criminal justice system need to come together and commit to robust cooperation and communication to prevent a mass casualty event before it happens. Now, nearly 60% of domestic terrorists begin to exhibit concerning behavior in the year leading up to their devastation, and that's why we need police and prosecutors and judges to take institutional desecration, hate crimes threats, and other offenses very, very seriously, and why families of people really need to learn what the warning signs are. So 53% of mass attacks leave a trail of clues leading up to them. They don't come out of nowhere. The Michigan State Police Stop a Plot campaign identifies the pathways to violence and reminds us all that if you see something, please say something. Some of the things to look for: grievances, an individual who may feel wronged due to a real or perceived experience. This feeling may stem from a sense of injustice, victimization, or embarrassment in a relationship, workplace, or otherwise in life. Violent ideation, the decision to use violence as the answer. While many people have thoughts of violence at times, most will not move towards the pathway to violence. Research and planning of an attack. During this step, an individual may begin thinking about how they would carry out the violence they believe would solve their grievance in some way, and this might begin as someone doing research on past attacks, weapons, researching potential targets, or looking for locations to attack. Pre-attack preparation. In this phase, the individual is psychologically ready to attack, and they might begin preparations such as collecting weapons, building explosives, target practicing, or purchasing special clothing or equipment, or even purchasing large amounts of fireworks. Probing and breaches. This step is not always included in the pathway, but it is very common for someone to do a dry run of an attack, and the individual may visit the intended target, look for security cameras, assess police presence, or even call in a fake bomb threat or shooting, and they may change their plans depending on what they learn. The attack, of course, is the final step of the pathway. It's actually carrying out the act of violence, and there is not always a linear path to violence. Many times there are steps between the grievance and the escalation, and we have the power through our laws and rhetoric to influence or to stop that very path. Because before the mass casualty event, there is often other things. There's vandalism, a domestic violence charge, an obsession with violent ideation, or even a multitude of other identifiable types of red flags. We, as a nation, have the tools to address this, and in Michigan, that includes ERPOs, emergency risk protection orders, or a red flag law that allows family members and law enforcement to petition courts to temporarily prevent people at risk of harming themselves or others from possessing or purchasing firearms or ammunition. But these tools only work if we actually use them. All of us have to start taking warning signs very seriously and act before concerning behavior leads to devastating attacks that could have been prevented. More information on how to petition for an ERPO is available on my department's website. Let me be clear, hate itself is not a crime, and our civil liberties protect the right to speak cruelly and hatefully and even despicably about our neighbors and our communities. And my office prosecutes criminal offenses when that crime, whether against a person or property, is also driven by hate against a particular group. Then my office will act with heightened urgency because an attack on one community is a threat to all of us. And sadly, what we know as law enforcement professionals is that these numbers don't even reflect all the instances of hate crimes in our state, as most of them will go unreported. It's estimated that only 3 to 10% of hate crimes are even ever reported to law enforcement. And this only exacerbates as fears of immigration enforcement paralyze many ethnic communities around the state. So victims are no longer coming forward for help. Witnesses are no longer sharing their accounts. And the real life implications of this law enforcement shift has had a detrimental impact on our justice system and the safety of our neighbors. The Department of Homeland Security was formed following the horrific terrorist attack on U.S. soil on 9/11, and it's reported that currently thousands of federal agents have been redirected from their normal assignments to the department's new primary focus, which is immigration enforcement and mass deportations. We've witnessed this firsthand as our federal partnership on combating human trafficking has basically come to a complete halt. These reassignments reportedly include many agents who specialize in counterterrorism. It's still too early to know yet what exactly happened when it comes to this attack on Temple, Israel last week, but it's not too early to know that the need for these federal partnerships is real and it's ongoing. These partnerships between federal, state, and local law enforcement have existed for decades, and they are proven to work. They have undoubtedly saved countless lives. We must be focusing on this work here at home, especially as the war rages on overseas and the likelihood of further attacks here in America only increases. Now, I stand here today full of gratitude for the Temple Israel staff and members of their security team, for the police officers, the West Bloomfield Township Police Department, the hundreds of officers from surrounding communities all around Metro Detroit, Michigan State Police, federal agencies, and my own department, who were quick to respond to the scene. It is their fast action in concert that saved the lives of all of those preschoolers on that day. But that coordination was no accident. It was an eventuality that the Temple had planned and prepared for meticulously. Sadly, this level of awareness for our safety is commonplace in the American Jewish diaspora and our temples and synagogues, schools, organizations, and events. Just as I did after the horrific and tragic attack on the Grand Blanc Church of Latter-day Saints, I implore every single house of worship, every religious school, every organization that represents a minority community to please contact their local police or sheriff's department to begin or to update your safety plan, not just for the worst case scenario, as we have seen in far too many places of worship, but for all emergencies, medical, weather, or otherwise. Through planning, situational awareness, and strong relationships with your local police, these are the best tools you can have to keep your community safe. Now, what happened last week should not have been inevitable, but it was. Anti-Semitism is a problem that is becoming far too comfortable. It's been welcomed into conversations, at the dinner table, classrooms, and even at the White House. It should not have been inevitable. It doesn't have to continue, but it is on each and every one of us to stop it. And with that, I thank you all for being here, and I'll open up the floor to questions.
We'll start with Colin in the back.
Where do you see those going now, the
So on the Senate Bill 502, which again we desperately need, just to understand that this is the anti-terrorism law has been in place for many, many years, but we had this decision at the United States Supreme Court, the Counterman decision, and it sort of changed the language that had to be included into any state or federal anti-terrorism laws. And so we've been working with the legislature. I personally testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's passed through that committee. It's now beyond its third reading on the Senate floor. I talked to Leader Brinks about this just yesterday, and she told me she had every plan to get that voted on as soon as possible. I certainly hope that not only that the Democrats in the Senate will vote for it, but that the Republicans will also support it. I mean, this is absolutely as bipartisan as it can get. And my hope is then after that Speaker Hull will take this very seriously and understand the great importance now more than ever of having an anti-terrorism law like this on the books. So that is my primary focus right now. Obviously, some of the people you see up here today worked very hard to get those other laws passed, the hate crimes bill, now law, and of course institutional desecration. But we absolutely have to have this anti-terrorism law. I know I'm standing up here with a bunch of legislators, so I'll let you guys all decide if there's anything you want to add.
A couple of the legislative items that I outlined, including, forming an office and a commission on preventing hate crime and extremist violence. I forwarded a white paper to the governor's office last year and didn't receive a response, frankly. And that was after the shooting of the killing of Minnesota Speaker Melissa Hortman. I sent it again after Charlie Kirk was shot, and I still didn't get a response. I sent it on Thursday, again, and I still didn't get a response. So I'm very much looking forward to working with the next governor on this issue, and I've already had great conversations with Jocelyn Benson on that, and so that's what I will do.
Yeah, what is so challenging about this is that we've invested dollars into our security systems. We have tackled with precision what is a hate crime and what are the penalties for it. The Attorney General is asking for more prosecutorial strength to deter future hate crimes. But if anti-Semitism was such an easy and simple thing to snuff out, we would have snuffed it out already. What it really depends on as well are non-legislative reactions, the goodwill of people to speak out and say that they too can't tolerate this in their community. The Jewish community is incredibly small but has a disproportionate target on our backs. And so it needs a lot of support from outside of the Jewish community to say, we can't tolerate this problem either. We can't tolerate the synagogue up the road being a target, the school up the road being a target. So in conversations that all of us have, we have to tamper it down in our own circles. If you hear something that sounds like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory in your group chats, you have to be fearless to say, I'm not comfortable with the direction of this conversation. This isn't right. Here's some facts on this. And, we're living in an age where social media takes off and, an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory can go all the way around the world and there just aren't enough voices that are there to combat it. People have to be vigilant on what they share and vigilant on what they post. And, we combat it because we have to. This affects our families, our lives, our community, our neighborhood, and it takes a bit of fearlessness for other people to get into that fight. When we combat anti-Semitism, you can look in our replies and see the vile that's spewed in it. And I can understand why somebody outside of the community would say, I don't want to respond to that because I don't want to take that type of abuse. I can assure you, speaking out against anti-Semitism is still better than enduring anti-Semitism. And it really requires the goodwill of people to step up in this moment.
And I'm going to mention one other thing that we haven't talked that much about yet, and that is the poisonous algorithms that are on our social media. And they are designed to get riled people up. They're designed to incite hatred because it keeps you scrolling longer. And, that's something that I would love to see Congress, try to address, because we know that there are so many instances where you have people who are not otherwise inclined to feel anti-Semitic or to feel hatred or bias towards a particular community, but it is the algorithm that inspires that, and that starts to show them messages of hate and then continues to show them messages of hate. It is what keeps people scrolling longer than anything else, including the cat videos that I often enjoy. But I mean, but it's really serious. It's a serious problem, and I think it's why we are so divided as a society today, and it's why we have such a, an exorbitant increase in the number of hate crimes.
Yeah, Annie. I have a question for Representative Steckeloff. You had mentioned that you've begun conversations about this year's budget. I was wondering if you're looking to appropriate more money for security specifically, and if this was something you wanted to do, this was motivated at all by what just happened.
In the last budget that's happening right now, we appropriated an additional $4 million. We have seen the spike in anti-Semitism and the targets of houses of worships around Metro Detroit. But because of the attack on Thursday, we've noticed and we've seen how those dollars worked. We've seen how the training worked. So we want to make sure that every congregation in this state, make sure that every school, Jewish schools and our Jewish community centers have the opportunity for those same dollars and those same trainings. So currently I am working with the Jewish Federation to find out what that number might be, and you'll be seeing a legislative directive spending request coming out from all of us coming out soon, as soon as we have further information.
If there's any evidence that something in the budget was not waste, fraud, and abuse, it was the impact of the dollars that the three of us delivered for Jewish security and the effect of what happened on Thursday.
And not that everyone here doesn't know that Ms. Ames is, of course, with the Detroit News. But once again, if you could start with your name and affiliation.
I'm not, Danny, just a few more things up here before, and besides that last question. I do want to mention that of the many cases that we have pending against the federal administration and various different federal agencies, money that was cut off that involved specifically training the police to combat terrorism. That is one of our cases. And you talk about defunding the police. I don't know what's a greater example than that than cutting off funding for anti-terrorism training, which it's clear that we badly need right now.
No, you said it.
Oh.
All right. Mr. Hewitt with WWJ.
John Hewitt, WWJ. I asked this question, I want to preface by saying I'm not trying to diminish anti-Semitism and what you're talking about today by asking it, so please don't take offense if I don't ask it well. But we've attended news briefings in Dearborn where people are afraid of Islamophobia, actions in Gaza, geopolitical forces that you've referenced. A twofold question. Are you concerned with the actions we have going on in Iran, what some have depicted, maybe for political purposes, as not prepared? We don't have an off-ramp, whatever analogies one wants to make, that has that amped the pressure up? And the other basis of my question is, have you reached out to the Islamic community maybe for joint messaging and lowering the temperature, to use the cliche, all around?
Thank you for that question. I want to make something very clear to people who are not from Detroit. The Detroit metro area is a melting pot. We have people here from all over the world. In my high school, we spoke almost every single language. Whether it's the Jews and the blacks, the Jews and the Chaldeans, and the Jews and the Muslims, we have stood together for 80 years. And the media is trying to portray and create a wedge through those two communities. We have long stood together, and we will not allow that to happen. As soon as this tragedy went down, the first few calls I received were from prominent Muslim leaders in this state. We have to work together. Last term, during October 7th, we had 2 Muslim legislators and 2 Jewish legislators in the House. And we made a point to make sure that we worked together, to make sure that the rhetoric was correct, that the language we were using is correct. But unfortunately, since then, the temperature has only risen. As was spoken about before, We have prominent media personalities who are perpetuating anti-Semitism, but more specifically, those anti-Semitic tropes. So we standing here, we're here to talk about what anti-Semitism is and how it continues to fuel the flames that led to this terrorist attack. But I want to make it clear that America, the media, will not break this relationship.
You know, I think every time Israel's engaged in any sort of military activity, it boomerangs on the Jewish community in the United States. That is just a fact. But that's not our fault. That's the fault of people who are radicalized, people who are extremists, and people who think that the answer to their grievances is violence. And those people are why we have to fund security for synagogues out of everyone's taxpayer dollars. Those people are why we have to work extra hard to prosecute hate crimes. Those people are why moms and dads were fearing for the safety and lives of their kiddos on Thursday. I think, you know, when we were talking about passing the hate crime laws, it was about preventing hate crimes against Jews, preventing hate crimes against the Arab community, against Muslims. These types of threats face all of us. But I will note there is one community that disproportionately suffers when these types of military actions occur overseas, and that's the Jewish community. You know, I don't want to downplay any sort of insecurity or threats against any other community, but at least in Michigan, a lot of the violence that we have seen and the threats that we have seen has been targeting the Jewish community. And so, like I said, any geopolitical conflict can raise temperatures between ethnic diaspora communities. I mean, in 2020, Azerbaijan and Armenia were in a war, but you didn't see attacks between those two communities engaged here in Michigan or in this country. There is something uniquely inflammatory and incendiary about when Israel conducts military operations. Whether you agree or disagree with those operations, they should not boomerang to redound to violence against the Jewish community in Michigan, and that's what all of us are here to say.
Hi, Samantha Schreiber with First News. Attorney General Nessel, you described this as nearly being something inevitable that shouldn't happen. Just to kind of hear some more personal perspectives from you guys, what is something that you saw in the days leading up to this past Thursday that made the hair stand up on your necks, that made you feel like this could happen to Temple Israel?
I can tell you exactly what. On Tuesday, I walked in. I was supposed to, on Sunday, go. University of Michigan Hillel had their centennial, which Representative Steckeloff attended yesterday. And I was supposed to go and be there and deliver a tribute with our Ann Arbor colleagues. I walked into the state capitol on Tuesday, and I told my staff, I don't feel comfortable going. I think it's a giant target. And so many people at the big house, I'm not sure, and I had never said this before about any sort of event, Jewish community or otherwise. I said, and then I'm hosting a, one of my monthly community conversations for my constituents in Commerce Township, and I said to my staff, please call the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. I want a deputy there. The rhetoric in the past 2 weeks in particular that I had seen online made me fearful for the first time. And then on Thursday, I've been working on hate crimes, but never once in my life did I fear that it would happen in West Bloomfield or that I would be a victim, or not that I was, but for the first time on Tuesday I said to my staff, I'm very concerned by the febrile atmosphere right now. I'm very concerned. So there was something this week that I felt, and then to have it happen on Thursday was just wild. So.
Yeah, I would say that, in a perfect world, as the war was started, it would have been nice to start having meetings specifically on domestic terrorism between the federal authorities, state, county, and local, and to start ramping up what we're going to do in response to this war in the Middle East. That's what I would have liked to have seen. And it's still what I would like to see, to make sure that we all are all working in concert together, not to address a mass casualty incident after it's happened, but to prevent one from happening in the first place. That's what I'd like to see.
Brandon? Brady Bushler with Level 12 News. Representative Steckeloff, you spoke about the security funding from the Michigan legislature. I was wondering if you could speak on if there are any conversations directly with representatives from places of worship about how that funding is allocated and what might go into all that, and also if that's something that's available to places of worship across the state, if there's specific ways that is delegated to allow and Representatives Arbett and Senator Voss, you can comment on that as well if you have any comments.
Thank you for the question. There's a few appropriations that have to do with religious communities. The security funding was going through the Detroit Federation Temple. They have the most knowledge numbers to make sure that they know where those specific dollars have to go. One of the things we also have in the Michigan budget, it's through Michigan DHHS, it is a line item. It's a multicultural line item, and there's a few different organizations, including the Jewish community, that receives funding predominantly to work on mental health facilities, which is obviously going to be well used this year. But this appropriation does go through the Federation on purpose, since they do have the best data.
All right, once again, I thank everybody for joining us here today. We will have a press release out shortly following today's event. If you should need anything, any follow-up questions, agpress@michigan.gov. We'll be working in there, putting in a full day. Again, I'm Danny Wimmer. I'll be around if you need anything. I'll see you all again shortly.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Today's event. If you should need anything, any follow-up questions, agpress@michigan.gov. We'll be working in there, putting in a full day. Again, I'm Danny Wimmer. I'll be around if you need anything. I'll see you all again shortly.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.